So what are you doing there?
In this little area facing towards this mountain and the creek, there's a path in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
Right up in front of it, there's a collection of crystals, and they're very icy blue in color
Mm-hmm.
and in nature. And there's like a soft blue light that emanates out from within them. It's a collection of them, and they're kind of arranged in like an altar,
Mm-hmm.
with the tallest one being in the middle towards the back, and then cascading down in size order from that
Mm-hmm.
point. But there's some metal around it in the back of it, almost like a backing to it.
So it looks man-made?
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were strategically put there.
Mm-hmm. Just in the woods?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a sense of who put them there?
They may have put them there.
You may have put them there? Mm-hmm.
In an earlier existence.
Mm-hmm. So
or
then
had something to do with them in an earlier existence.
you did?
They may have grown nearby and then were placed there.
Mm-hmm. So let's find out if you put them there. I'm going to count backwards from 3 down to 1. When I reach the number 1, you'll be there. You'll be there putting the crystals together. What are you doing?
We have a few people that have said they would help, and they're helping me to arrange the crystals in a very specific order.
Mm-hmm. Why are you putting them in an order?
They will correspond correctly to the energy that we're trying to create when they're in this specific order. It is what would be considered a religious ceremony
Mm-hmm.
from our home planet.
A religious ceremony?
We do not have religion,
Mm-hmm.
but the closest we could come to your understanding is that it is a religious ceremony.
Who are you celebrating?
This is the Creator,
Mm-hmm.
the opening of the earth.
The opening of the earth. Could you tell me more about that?
The opening of the earth creates a rift of light that emanates outward. And in this, there is
Mm-hmm.
there is a healing property that comes from this light.
From inside the earth, from the opening?
From these rifts that we can create in this ceremony.
Mm-hmm. And it's healing. Is this healing for the people, for the planet?
It will blanket the planet
Mm-hmm.
with the healing energy and the healing light. And it was important that we create this for later usage.
For when? For usage for when?
800 years have passed
Mm-hmm.
since the last opening, and the next opening will be ticking down, ticking.
Mm-hmm. The countdown?
Countdown. I get It is fast approaching.
It is fast approaching Jen's timeline? Mm-hmm. And will this opening actually open in the earth? Or rift?
The rift or chasm that it comes from will open and can be perceived. What the problem is what to do with the rift after.
So there's an opening, and this is a healing energy, but then afterwards it has to go back?
Closing it is the problem.
How did it close before?
Before? I need to focus.
Mm-hmm.
How did it close before? It didn't close before.
Is this located on the earth?
This has many locations on Earth.
Where?
There are some that fall along the Appalachian Mountains,
Mm-hmm.
some along the rift lines in California.
Mm-hmm.
Many go down into Mexico, all along the Pacific Rim,
Mm-hmm.
into Siberia, even into Europe along the Rose Line, and further into the heart of Africa,
Mm-hmm.
down towards South Africa in that area, the Himalayan mountains, the Great Gobi Desert, the center of Australia.
And what are they? Who put them there?
The poles as well.
The poles as well?
These are naturally occurring energy rifts that you will find on a majority of planets that are inhabited.
Mm-hmm.
The energy is meant to be tapped into by placing these crystals close to them in the earth, and the energy will then be pulled from the crystals and will be used almost as similar to a tablet of sorts, where you can put your hands onto it and touch it and enforce this energy to come out. And it can have tremendous healing properties for anyone who is breathing
Mm-hmm.
when these are activated. Though in the hands of the wrong people, it can be a very negative experience, which has happened before.
It has? What is?
Yes.
What happened?
It will take over the mind of people who encounter it by chance or who have tapped into it out of desire, and they will use it to mold the vision that they prefer to see, which does not always equal better for all.
But has this happened before?
Most definitely. And that's why it is kept very well hidden now,
Mm-hmm.
as it has caused civilizations to disappear.
So civilizations have disappeared when they use this crystal?
Changed, disappeared. It has created anomalies on our planet as well.
Can you tell me about that?
Yes. For your first example, is the closest one in mind is what you would call your Bermuda Triangle,
And what
or the rift that exists in the ocean underneath the waters close to here.
So that was created because someone was abusing these crystals?
No, that is part of the rift system
Uh-huh.
that connects to these crystals.
Okay.
And When I say rift, I see jagged, deep lines in the earth that would create like a chasm, or very, very deep, deep, deep chasms that are narrow.
Okay.
And ripped through the earth, slashed through the earth.
Mm-hmm. So, who used these crystals?
We were the first to use them as we brought them here to this planet.
And who are you?
I am the commander.
Mm-hmm. And where are you from?
I am from a dimensional planet that heard the need for the seeding of this planet.
How did you hear that?
It was announced.
Mm-hmm. Just really loudly?
It's more of a, what you would consider a telepathic understanding.
Okay.
There was a general awareness of this planet being created and its intention. And it was quite a stir for the many of us who are very closely connected in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
In this, we saw the potential. We saw the creationism that would go into it. And we also felt stifled on our own planet and longed for a new adventure, a new colonization effort, a creation of something new. And to do this, and to make sure that it was what would be habitable for our species, we placed the crystals there as our first altar.
That was your first altar.
To the divine universe.
Why did you feel stifled by your own planet? What was wrong with your planet?
Nothing new ever happened.
No contrast?
No.
What did you guys do day to day?
Pleasantly enjoyed each other.
Mm-hmm.
Shared memories of other experiences that we'd had on other planets and other lifetimes. This was not our original home planet too. This was definitely a planet that over what we would consider millions of years we had inhabited as well, and had become our home planet. And it is a continuum in our life existence that we will continue to inhabit new planets, and as we outgrow them, we will find the next, and it is that adventure that we can depend on.
Do you create planets? Because I know you were supposed to seed Earth, but now are you creating a new planet, the new Earth?
Are you talking in the sense of creating the rock and the sky and the atmosphere and the animals?
Yes.
Good question. There's a couple of different ways that I could answer that for you, and the best way is that we have engineered everything that breathes, and everything that thinks, and everything that creates. Everything else is another type of engineering effort, and it is more artificial and three-dimensional in generating efforts than most would realize. Now, there are concrete foundations to things, but not as much of it is as real as you would believe.
So it's not really as real, so that means you can create an Earth, you create everything that's living and breathing, but it's not. What do you mean by that?
Things such as sunsets and sunrises and mountaintops with mists on them, that is more of a hologram than you realize. It is a very detailed, highly oriented type of energy that we can form and mold and create into something that is very believably such, and convince the atoms in the same to behave in that manner. So a rock is a rock, but was the rock created by someone? Not in the sense that someone came and made rock. It's a hologram that was made by someone.
Who?
It's very, very, we have many engineers. This is not something one entity could design on its own. It is an amalgamation of many efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a collection of different aspects from many different planets all across the numerous universes that we can relate to on this planet's existence.
So it's a hologram, so it's created. So what exactly is the hologram?
It is very similar to a computer program that creates the reality around us.
Mm-hmm.
Though the bodies we inhabit and the animals we share are more real than the hologrammed environment around us. And
Okay.
the concept of real.
So they're more real than like a sunset.
Definitely.
So eating is more real than seeing?
Not a necessary concept where we are from, but yes, it is something we've given you because it brings you pleasure.
Well, how do you work with God, Source, or what is God, Source to you?
Not a single entity. It is something shared within all of us that allows us to create these new worlds.
So
it is definitely not something you are aware of yet as a people. Yet it is inside everyone that is breathing.
So is Source more inside of a person or outside, or both?
You have to have the inside and the outside matching in order for someone's perception of reality to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that is.
So Source, or who created you?
In a sense, we've all created ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So your life on this other planet was created by you?
We have continually recreated ourselves over and over again in efforts of learning new concepts and the betterment of our people.
Mm-hmm.
This life and death that you experience here is very unique to this planet.
So you don't have life and death over there?
It is more of a continual stream.
Mm-hmm. Do you change bodies?
When you feel that you've outgrown that body and that phase, you can choose as you would like and recreate.
What do your people look like?
Mostly very tall.
Mm-hmm.
Very tall with very light, long blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
They have very light colored eyes with green or blue, sometimes even purple.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very unique characteristic of our people.
Mm-hmm.
And the inner rim of the eye will have a golden crown around it. And that's how you'll know they are from that specific Pleiadian. I don't want to say planet, there's more to it. Pleiadian.
Pleiades?
What is the next word? Construct.
Mm-hmm. So that's where you guys are from? Mm-hmm.
One of my originations.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed that existence many, many times.
Mm-hmm. And do you help the humans from that existence?
I was one of the first to volunteer to go.
What made you want to volunteer?
I enjoy starting new things where many would rather follow
Mm-hmm.
and contribute. I have a pioneering sense of being, very anciently distilled into my thought patterns.
Mm-hmm. So you are like a pioneer.
It is exhilarating to pioneer something, a great privilege.
And what exactly are you pioneering?
This is the great experiment of ours. at this time is this planet. And that's what has been the pioneering efforts from the get-go. It was a very lonely planet in the beginning.
What was it like in the beginning?
It was very gray. Very gray and bleak and cold and dark. And the loneliness would create chills in your body. There was so much loneliness. And the species that we had created and placed beforehand, before we had crash landed, were not intellectually stimulating as we had hoped they would be.
So you hoped they would be more evolved?
And it was not so, and we could not leave, and we were stuck. And it didn't feel right, but we had no choice but to continue.
So what did you do?
At first, we had to bury the one of us who did not make it through the landing. And in this, we had to swim out of the ship and take with us what we wanted. We made a couple of trips back and forth, but it was so cold.
Where were you crash landed? Where did you crash?
It is somewhere with a very strange type of rock quarry around me, where there are lines that go vertically through the rock. And the rock is a very dark gray, a very hard type of rock. And the water is a little more stagnant, less flowing, but very dark and cold and very murky, brackish.
So did you start breeding with the people?
Eventually, not at first. It didn't feel right. Then the loneliness was too much, and we realized that it was part of the mission. It was not forceful. It was very natural, but not my favorite moment of this experiment.
It wasn't your favorite?
No.
How many children did you have?
There were many that did not make it, as their bodies were not inclined to carry a child such as this. They were more like a loyal pet than a companion.
Right.
In the sense of a human companion. And it was done not out of need and desire to do the act. It was done out of the need to continue our species.
Yes.
Within this.
And so that is how it started?
That was the very beginning. And it was terrible. It was terrible.
It was terrible.
It was terrifyingly lonely. And I was in charge of the others.
You were?
They had no knowledge that there would be a crash landing, and I did not either.
Were they very upset?
It was very hard to lead those who knew they would never go back. And there was much depression that came as a result of this.
There was. What did you guys talk about?
It was a very new concept for us. We had not experienced that in any recent lifetimes on our planet. We had evolved to a point of more or less mental perfection.
How did it feel to feel depressed?
It was soul-wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
We could not rip it from our bodies. We could not remove the feeling, and we yearned for home.
Could you still communicate with your home planet?
We still had crystals that we were able to salvage from the ship, but because the ship was underwater and damaged, it would not communicate effectively back.
So you use crystals to communicate with your planet?
As much as we could.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to send out signals, but we are on the ends of an outpost in our universe here. We are very isolated. And in this isolation, we knew that possibly a passing ship might pick up the beacon,
Mm-hmm.
but it was not going to reach our planet.
What about all the other ships that crashed? Were you able to communicate with those?
I knew there were others, but I had no idea where they were,
Mm-hmm.
or if any had survived.
So you were just stranded,
We
alone.
searched. That was the only ray of hope we
Mm-hmm.
had, was that we could find others. But the point was not for us to mix with our others who had landed as well.
Right.
It was more advised for us to avoid each other at all costs.
Why is that?
We needed to create individualized hybrids within
Mm-hmm.
those regions and create those groups of people and allow them to intermingle, not for us to stick with our own and create more of our own on this planet.
I see. Well, was this before the dinosaurs or after?
There are still remnants of the dinosaurs at this point, but we had to clear out the bigger ones.
Did they eat the people?
They were too much of a resource drain.
Mm-hmm. The dinosaurs were.
While they were fascinating to watch, it was, the channel needed changing.
Can you tell me a little bit about them? Were they as pictured in the history books?
There have been some alterations made where things were not exactly, but based on the bones that have been found, they have been able to recreate many of them from many time periods,
Mm-hmm.
though there are many more that they have yet to discover.
There are.
Yes.
Did they look the same? Were they basically the same colors?
The colors are more or less the same.
Mm-hmm.
Very earth-toned. They would blend in more to their environment based on where they were, and in ways help to camouflage them from other predators. But
What about the T-Rex? Was that the one that would eat the people?
T-Rex would, like the great white, tend to keep to themselves.
Oh, so it's not quite.
No, the people hunters were the smaller dinosaurs.
Oh.
The bigger ones were more, I want to eat a smaller dinosaur, not a tiny little person.
Right.
It is a hors d'oeuvre compared to a dinner.
Mm-hmm. So they would eat smaller dinosaurs.
People do not taste that great according to dinosaurs.
Which dinosaurs would eat the people?
There were what you would call a very razor-toothed type of velociraptor,
Mm-hmm.
an ancient, well, it's more of a, I see it with more wings, but on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
More winged creature, like the velociraptors as well.
And how long did this go on, where the humans and dinosaurs coexisted?
It was definitely a longer experiment than we anticipated. It was not something that was kept because it just did not produce any results. Humans could not begin to evolve if they were constantly being hunted.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to change this evolutionary pattern. So there have been many instances where we would extinguish the grouping of these animals in a certain area.
How would you do that?
There were a couple of different ways. The neatest way by far was by creating a type of gas that would come in as they were feeding near a swampy area, and it would just silence them all very easily, without any harm, without any struggle, and they would just drop.
And die?
Very close to water as well, so that way it would be quickly dealt with.
Okay.
The other ways, a bit more unpredictable. We have seen outside asteroid influence come in and decimate an area, but this does not make it very easy for people to live nearby as a result afterwards, and it is not a preferred method.
So there were many methods used.
It takes a very long time for some methods to clear away. We have learned over time that it is better to do it quickly rather than to create a bigger mess.
So after you eradicated the dinosaurs, were you ever thinking about getting rid of people?
There was no intention of getting rid of people. The people are the thing that we have come here to create, so it would mean the defuncting of our mission should we remove them.
What do you want out of people? What are you hoping? What do you want the end result to be?
That they will become as evolved in nature as we have on that planet and be able to communicate with us and join us in this knowledge in our club.
How do they do that? How do humans?
Time.
What's the
time and influence, and it creates the right parameters for this enlightening effect to happen.
So what's the best way for a human to evolve and be able to communicate with you?
The first step is awareness. There are many triggers placed around every single human on a daily basis.
Can you give me an example?
Yes, your numbers, for example. There are other things. There will be things people will see out of the corners of their eyes that make them guess that their reality is not as straightforward as they believe it is. Glitches, for example. There are also other examples that you will see in your daily understanding of who is around you, such as the child that is in the store crying on the other end will not be there when you go to look for it.
So once you have the awareness that your reality is being created, that's a first step?
First step.
Well, what about the Mandela effect, where some people remember history differently? Is that the same?
There is, in that, many different branches. So the creation of history will be remembered differently by myself than it will be by those who are on the ship with me. Yet it was still the same experience. There will be tiny caveats of information that will change based on our perception and how we were aligned at that moment. The same experience will come off very negatively for one and very positively for another, based on their alignment to that situation.
So it can be different for each person.
Very much, and that's why history can be remembered very differently. For your Hitler, World War II was a glorious time. For those enslaved in camps, it will be the most traumatic experience of their most recent existence. And some will say it never happened.
Well,
and believe it, and it will never have happened.
So some people actually didn't experience World War II?
Some people did. Some people didn't. Some people have willed their minds to believe that that is not something that happened. And for them, it did not happen.
Because they willed their minds that it didn't happen?
The word fact is in fact not a fact.
Fact is not a fact. So everybody's creating their own reality?
100%.
What about Hitler's reality? What happened to Hitler?
Hitler was a abused, neglected child that longed for attention. and was constantly denied his attention until he became a young man and suffered a nervous breakdown based upon chemical warfare in World War I. This opened him up as a channel to receiving the energy of fear. But he was not a remnant of fear, he was a channel of fear. And he understood how to use this very wisely.
So was this the fear virus? He became a channel for the fear virus on our planet?
Yes. Through his exposure to certain chemicals in the trenches, it opened up his channel as he experienced devastation around him.
So then...
He's very misunderstood.
So then what happened to him after he passed on?
In the sense of, where did his energy go?
Yeah.
That was one energy that was not as easily recycled as the others, though he did not pass as many of you think he passed.
How did he pass?
He was much older, in a very warm climate, disguised heavily.
Which climate? Where did he go?
At first, he went down to the very tip of Africa and was smuggled through there. Then was brought over towards the very southernmost tip of South America, where colonization efforts had already been established, though there was a small period of time between him going from one continent to the other in order to protect while the rest of the planet dealt with the consequences of his actions.
So how did he die?
Old age.
So he never suffered in his physical reality.
He never felt that he was doing something wrong.
What about in the afterlife when he saw what he did?
He understood that this was part of his contract, and then in the perception of the fear that was installed in him, he saw why he took the road that he took.
Was he planning on taking a different road before?
He would have happily been an artist and bothered no one if they had let him.
How did he have so much control over so many people?
He was the perfect vessel for the fear virus.
Is the fear virus in other people now?
Definitely.
And
it
when
always finds a way.
Is that almost like the devil?
Some have called it that. It's more than that, though.
So it's stronger?
It's almost, when we consider it from the other perspective, a very simplified version of it. You would think it would have a bit more magnanimity to it, considering how much it is and what it is. Giving it a single identity as a devil has always been quite humorous.
Right, well, but it was powerful. He was able to control so many people.
Definitely. That doesn't change, though. That is something that is very easily done by many leaders throughout history. Fear is the ultimate method of control.
That's true.
And whether you are a benevolent leader or a dictator, you will have to establish some form of fear in order to keep your kingdom in control.
Maybe that's why I'm not a good leader. Well, so in the afterlife, he didn't become one with fear since he channeled fear?
No, fear cannot transcend into that.
Okay.
It is an earthly remnant.
I guess what I'm wondering is, did he feel guilty and bad about all the people he harmed?
No.
Because it was his contract?
It was not a feeling of guilt. It was a feeling was a feeling of, I gave you the option to not make me do this, and you chose poorly.
So
and it is all your own undoing.
So he realized he had a better option and he didn't take that one?
He was denied a better option.
Oh, by his upbringing?
And in his early adult life, he did try to do the right thing. He just wanted to impress his father. And in this, he did impress his father. He achieved his goals. He does not look at it as the massacre that we now know it as.
What was the spiritual purpose for him to be there, to do that?
Believe it or not, there were many secret efforts that were being made at the time in his work, and this was merely a cover for what they were truly trying to find. And the work is very similar to the work that we are doing now.
What kind of work was Hitler involved in that?
Yes, he was much more involved in what we would call the occult, or the transcendence onto other realms and dimensions, and was very in tune to this. In fact, some will even classify it as a journey that was furthered by him to the cutting edge at that point, and paved the way for the new age era of the 50s and the 60s to come through. Though there will never be any type of direct credit ever given in that sense. But the Nazis spent much time in Southeast Asia and India, all over the Middle East, while other troops were busy bombarding and keeping people busy. They were searching for things.
What were they searching for?
They were searching for what we're searching for.
What
they don't know and what they know exists. And they wanted proof. They wanted the crystals. They wanted the symbolism. They wanted everything that they could put together and piece together in order to make sense of it. Because there is a divine knowledge in all of it.
Were they able to get any of it?
They received many things.
What did they receive? And why? If they had divine knowledge, would they want to kill off part of the population?
They misunderstood what they received and felt that they needed to cleanse the earth. But this was only misunderstood by Hitler as a channel himself.
Well, that's a pretty big misunderstanding.
In the misunderstanding has created the only chance for your people to transcend.
My Jewish heritage, you mean?
No, your human heritage.
Oh.
Had he not continued his journey, we would have never had an atomic bomb. We would have never furthered ourselves to this point. It is unfortunate, but it is how the energy played itself out with free will.
Did the people that were killed in the Holocaust, did they come into their lifetime knowing that they would? Did they have a contract? Was it in their contract?
As much of a contract as any contract has been for any of us, it was for them as well. And it was a very sacrificial effort made on behalf of millions and millions and millions.
And that was, well, I have a relative who just passed away, but she was one of 3 that survived her city, and her whole family was killed I wonder
why she chose that experience.
Yes.
It is not the first experience she will have had in a civilization that would choose to massacre her and her family or put her through a existence where the lesson was so deeply embedded and traumatic. This has happened many, many, many times. It is just the most recent one in our memorable history. In each effect, every time you have an existence where something truly terrible happens, the knowledge that you gain from that when you cross over and go back is so immense that it allows you in that dimension to further your energy yielding potential. It is an accumulation. You accumulate while you're here. That is what it looks like. It is like an accumulation of happiness and misery, and they must be balanced. And when you take from that and you are able to efficiently fill them and balance from them, then you are able to regenerate. And then you evolve as a higher being.
So you have to have both in order to evolve?
Every time. You must have both. It has to equal. The experiences have to be of equal nature in order for you to evolve as a higher being.
And so getting back to the question.
Good is bad is what I see. I'm sorry. Go back to your question.
No, but back to the question of how else can a human evolve? Number one was becoming aware that their reality is created.
You can control how you are evolving more through your energy. You have a clearer picture of the evolutionary path you'd like to take, yet evolution is not something you can predict. It is more a nurturing, a nature-nurture creation, and what happens, happens, and that's the beauty of the evolution. It is very undescribable and unpicturable. It will be what it will be, and that's why we do it. It is the sheer surprise of what that will turn out to be is why we continue this path and why we put ourselves through so much, is we want to see what the next level will look like.
So you don't know yet what the next level will look like?
And that is the beauty of it all.
If you were to want the next level to be like something, what would you want it to be like?
I would like it to be more like this existence on this planet, in that we have the happiness that you find when you look at your new baby for the first time constantly around you, or the happiness you find when you find that the love you have for another is completely reciprocated, that exuberance, but all the time.
Okay. Are you creating that right now on a new earth?
That is the goal.
And then how soon can people move to the new earth or the higher selves of people?
It's already being seeded, though the environment is not 100% ready.
Why?
Within the next 2 generations, it will be inhabited.
Will it be inhabited by the next 2 generations?
By many of them.
What about, say, Jen? Will she move to the new earth?
No.
No.
She is committed to this earth, as she has been from the beginning. She will see it through till the end, and then will join the very populated new earth.
It'll be very populated?
She will be here till its last day.
Okay.
That was her desire. It is her baby, in a sense.
And why have a new earth? Why?
Why not?
Well, what is wrong with this earth? It's just because of the fear virus?
The fear virus has created a very unstable environment in which people cannot create as effectively as they would like. Yes, contrast is needed, but there is a difference between contrast and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that can be eradicated. It will allow us to appreciate each other more and fear each other less. And that is the first step.
That is the first step. So just going back to the Hitler thing, so Hitler's, the purpose, the divine purpose behind Hitler was for the atomic energy to bring people together and create occult knowledge.
He was one of the few who had immense power and believed that there was more to this world than what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he is not perceived as a beacon in this area,
Mm-hmm.
though he was. In that, he really allowed for many connections to be made by research and pirating of these ancient sites and these ancient relics. He put a lot of pieces together in a puzzle.
So of ancient civilizations?
Yes.
Which ones?
He understood the Aryan civilization very well that came from India. And the Aryan civilization all stemmed from yet another ship that crashed from our people into the foothills of the Himalayan mountains. And with them, their ship was not as badly damaged as my own. It was not immersed within water. This civilization was able to prosper and grow much faster, and they were able to communicate a bit more with ships that did pass by. In this, they were able to create things and relics that were left behind that Hitler's researchers were able to look at, bring to him, and they pieced it together. Not all of it, but many pieces they pieced together. That this was not just a coincidence, that there was a divine effort to bring all of these civilizations in evolvement at the same time, or at slightly different times in the same time frame, and for them to create this new earth. He did understand that.
So why would he want to kill people? It's just in such a horrific way.
It was truly a misunderstanding that fed into a very deep hatred he had from a very early age of certain types of people.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't noticed, that is being bred out of people.
Yes.
The next few generations will not really comprehend racism or bias the way you saw it in the 40s.
I was just talking about that this morning.
Mm-hmm.
It is being bred out, isn't it?
It's disappearing. Children are not as aware of their differences as they once were.
What about all the people in control now who are racist?
What about them?
How long will those types of people be in control?
You have a maximum of 12 to 15 years before this entire government will literally be shaken down to its very core. We are, I don't want to say killing, but we are killing out the old racism, the old mentality. We are squashing it out. It has no play. This is its dying death throes that you're seeing in our government, a final crescendo, and then it will be gone.
Is it true that the cabal will be taken down, the elite that is in control of like the pharmaceutical companies, the the food we eat. Is it true there will be a takedown?
There will be a transfer over the next 15 years of people realizing that they no longer need these products, and it will naturally crumble.
Will people be like shocked to find out that they have been poisoned? I've heard that before.
They've already begun to realize this, and our dependence on these industries is becoming a very questionable one, and they are very aware. The smart ones are beginning to branch out and are looking at more holistic companies that they can begin now with and grow for the same intention, though. So it is really not what they are creating, it is really the intention of those who are in power. They will all die off, and the new replacements will be those that we rear, and it is up to us to decide how they function in this picture, in the sense of what kind of world are these children going to create,
right,
based on what we have shown them.
So in the next generation, will it be crucial that they stop eating meat and eat vegan and meditate, or is this just just different according to the person?
The need for food is simply a desire, not a true soul need. It is something you do for entertainment on this realm.
On this realm, well,
it does not necessarily matter what you eat. It matters what the vibration of that is that you are eating and what you are taking into your body. So the apple you are eating may have been picked by someone who has a very unhealthy relationship with their job, could be forced, enslaved into this position. And so the thing you think may be the healthiest thing may actually contain much negative energy. And
can we just change the vibration of our food?
That is the goal in mind, is, though some will call it praying over their food, it is a general effort of changing the vibration of your food with thankful, grateful conceptuality.
Is that enough to change the vibration?
Always.
What about like a tasty cake?
Every time.
Very good. So in the next generations, will that still be on this earth, or will that be on the new earth?
This earth still has much to go.
Oh, okay.
There is the option for many in the upcoming changes to begin to inhabit the new earth, and they will be the first to go that are not hybrids.
Oh, the first to go will be not hybrids?
They will go, and they will be greeted by the hybrids.
Oh, okay.
So the hybrids are there now. They are, in effect, almost a giant nursery.
Well, are Jen's children there?
Yes.
Oh, so they are already living on the new earth.
They're already there. They take them up on the ship if they want to come and visit me. But they are already there.
Okay.
They have established. They are all young, though. There are so many of them. They are not alone.
No, who do they play with?
The other hybrids.
Oh. What are their personalities like? Jen's children?
Very curious. Very sweet. Very well-natured. They are very, very quick, intelligent, perceptive, but they each have their own way of doing things.
They do?
They do. They all have very beautiful eyes, though.
What color are their eyes?
Their eyes range in color. Some have a very beautiful blue, and some have a green.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always a mix of those two colors with the golden crown around the inside of the eye, around the black pupil.
How old are they?
They range in age, but their eyes are not shaped like ours.
They're not.
They are more almond shaped. They look like they look like, oh, I don't know. I just lost it. My nose got really itchy. Oh.
The shape of the eyes.
It's the shape of the eyes they let me see.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped me from seeing the rest of the face.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very happy there, though, where they are. They're
Wonderful.
very well cared for. It is truly, there is no fear there, and that's why it feels so good. There is none of that there.
Mm-hmm.
They scan you before you go on.
How do they get rid of the fear if you have fear on you?
They scan it out of you. They can detect it and pull it off. And literally, as if picture yourself walking through a metal detector, it pulls it off of you as you walk in.
Now, some people have talked about after they pass away and they're leaving that body, their soul leaves the body, they go through a type of healing scanner. Is this the same thing? And they say they're pulling out all the negative energy.
Does it have a red light to it?
Yes.
Yes, then that's the same exact one.
So is that what you guys do? You scan people as they leave this planet? Oh, okay.
It is a general scanning in order to remove your earthly impurities, specifically your fear virus, and any other diseases or amalgamations you have created as a result of your experience on this planet. It just purifies you so that way you don't bring any of that with you over there.
I see.
But it is not a heaven. It is truly a new earth. It is a new planet. It is a beautiful planet.
Can you describe this new earth?
Yes. It is a very green and blue and opulent, with very, it just feels like almost everything's like a little bit bouncy. Like when you walk, there is not a heavy sense of gravity. Gravity is lighter. There is a little bit more of a bounce to your step, literally. Nothing is as heavy as this planet. There is no food. There is no need for it. There is gardening, though. There is a lot of that. There is beautiful, beautiful species of plants that are just grown together, and it's something you can just stare at for hours. There are 2 moons.
There are 2 moons?
2 moons, 1 sun. And you can definitely see other planets in the distance, though.
Can you see Earth?
No. No. Definitely not. They had to be kept far from view from each other.
Why is that?
There could be no possibility that this planet would be found before it was ready to be found. It had to be well hidden and well orchestrated.
So you basically created this new Earth. And
beautiful.
Do you work with God or Source? You just use Source?
Correct.
Okay.
There is no overbearing feature like God. That just stems from the loneliness that came from our origination on this planet. If there was one person up there that could hear us, we would have been saved.
Oh.
And the rest misunderstood what we meant.
So Source didn't exactly create you. You created yourself. From where?
Source creates all.
Oh, okay.
But there is no white man in a robe with a beard
But
looking down on us all.
But source is you, and we are also source?
Everything is.
Okay.
We, from our previous experience, had just learned that we could manipulate the energies to create these new patterns within us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember, this is nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that has happened many, many, many times, and quite frankly, it will never end. It will continuously happen. So if it is a continuum, should we search for a creator?
No. And do you want to search for a creator?
Who created the continuum?
Yes, who?
Exactly. Where did that come from?
Who created everything?
You're not getting that. Or maybe that is not the right question. Because I felt like I was scoffed at the idea of who created all that when I thought it. What created all that? When?
When? When were you created?
That is a question without an answer. But I understand your question, and I see the need for it. But there is a very big wall between me and that answer.
I think we should find that one later.